The end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, folks, today we're going to jump on that gigantic, sharp, interactive board, go through Ricoh's first 9 months of their FY, which ends in March of 2025. Rico, I wrote it in red. I want to say it really loud. Stop selling IT services. It's killing your profitability. Stop becoming a digital services company. You know, Rico, they don't know what they want to be. You know, they talked about we want to be a digital services company, and everybody in the marketplace got all confused and started yelling at Rico. Then they ran around and said, oh, no, we're still going to sell MFPs. They're just a confused company. You know, I've been pretty critical of Rico. I've been critical of them running around Europe buying up IT services companies. I mean, it's like, what are you doing, Rico? You did that here in the United States with a company called Mindshift, then you had a big impairment charge. Rico, stop being an IT services company. Stop becoming a digital services company. It's killing you. And it's sad. But it's an important story for the industry because what the hell? You got Konica Minolta running around talking about how they want to do IT services. They buy all covered, buy up all these assets up underneath all covered. And at the end of the day, Konica Minolta is the biggest train wreck in the industry regarding finances. And Rico, you're not far behind them. Let's jump on the board. I'll share my thoughts. Starting out with the top line revenue for the first 9 months is $12 billion. Operating profit of $225.7 million or 1.9%. I'm going to circle that 1.9% with my red pen because it's disgustingly low. And folks, I get it. Right now we're seeing some major players in our industry have some hiccups regarding operating profit. But at the end of the day, when I think about Rico, they've had hiccups for a decade. And they're not getting scared enough to end the hiccups. No one's hitting them on the back hard enough to stop the hiccups. Maybe today's episode will help them end the hiccups because 1.9% operating profit, you know, you struggle with it, Rico. And with all these services you're selling, you would think you'd be bringing in more profitability. Let's talk about that operating profit. From 2019, ladies and gentlemen, they ended the year with 3.9%. In 2020, a disaster happened at Rico. They wrote off $297 million. In 2021, 2.3% operating profit. In 2022, 3.7%. 2023, 2.6%. And here we are in 2024. The first 9 months we're at 1.9%. They're forecasting 2%. And then they issued an update to the forecast because they're going to make some money. I'll share that in a second. But at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, this is not knocking it out of the park. This is not a home run by any stretch of the imaginations. Digital services company. How can you be a digital services company? You're providing services to organizations all over the world, but yet your operating profit shows you as a commodity-driven company. Something's missing. And I believe what's missing is the ability for an OEM to sell services profitably. What's missing is the right human capital in the organization around the world to deliver these services profitably. What's missing is a business plan that makes sense. Because what Rico's doing, they've been doing for a long damn time. What Rico's doing, Konica Minolta's been doing for a long time, and it's not working. When does this industry wake up to the fact that it doesn't work and they have to make some changes? Let's talk about the digital products division of Rico. That's the MFP manufacturing. At the end of the day, it did $2.8 billion for Rico for the first 9 months. It had an operating profit of $147.9 million or 5.2%. Which at the end of the day, manufacturing equipment, selling it off to yourselves and selling it off to other folks, it should be pretty profitable, right? But folks, is that what they are, a manufacturer of MFPs? Or are they a digital services company that's going to go out in the marketplace and deliver IT service and the likes to end users? Let's look at their graphics communications business. There's two divisions: commercial printing, $1.2 billion for the 9 months. Industrial printing, $205.3 million for the 9 months. Together, those two produce $1.4 billion in revenue with an operating profit of $117.1 million or 8.3%. And folks, at the end of the day, where's the operating profit coming from? Is it coming from the industrial printing or is it coming from the commercial printing? And folks, $205.3 million for 9 months in commercial printing? Should they even be in industrial printing? Should Rico even be selling industrial print equipment? I've been saying it for a long time. They need to get the hell out of that business. Not enough money. Konica the same way. They run about the same revenue. Let's look at digital services. This is where they have office print. They have IT services and other. Let's just focus on office services, which is IT services, infrastructure, including hardware and IT, process automation, application service, business process services, workplace experience. Let's talk about that. That business over 9 months did $4.3 billion in sales. Let's look at their office printing hardware, MFPs, $4.4 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, that's $9 billion in revenue between office printing and office services. $9 billion in revenue for the first 9 months. That's $1 billion a month. Easy math, right? Operating profit, 0.9%. It's just absurd. $83.7 million worth of profit on $9 billion in revenue. $4.3 billion of that is office services, IT services. And folks, you know what? It all breaks down. Rico does a pretty good job breaking down their numbers. I got to congratulate him on that. I wish the others were this detailed. But they show office services business for 9 months, 4.3 total. IT infrastructure, 1.4 billion. IT services, 1 billion. Application services, 822.6 million. Business process services, 666.3 million. And workplace experience, 365.7 million. You can see the red arrow on the gigantic sharp interactive board. I'm pointing it toward application services. Application services is this: installing, constructing, operating, and maintaining in-house and purchased application software. In-house software includes DocuWare, Rico Kingtone Plus, and Document Solutions products. So in this 822.6 million 9-month global number is DocuWare, and I've been asking Rico for a long time to tell us how much DocuWare is really worth, because I've always said I think they're losing money in DocuWare. I think the revenue's going down and the profitability is going down. And of course, they don't prove it by sharing those numbers. They talk about business process services, print shops, mail rooms. 666.3 million in revenue for the year so far, 9 months. Excuse me. But ladies and gentlemen, I broke it out between Americas, Europe, and Japan. In the Americas, total revenue for digital services, okay, for office services, IT services, process automation, workplace experience. Total revenue in Americas is $839.6 million for 9 months. That's not a lot, less than $100 million a month. In Europe, it's $1.3 billion for the 9 months. And in Japan, it's $2.1 billion. In Japan, they're doing quite a bit with office services. But look at this. IT infrastructure in Japan, $900 million. IT services in Japan, $548.2 million. Applications, $492.4 million in Japan. Business process, $17.7 million. And work experience, $94.5 million in Japan. But I want to focus on IT infrastructure. In Japan, it's $900 million in revenue. In the U.S., it's $47.9 million for 9 months. Rico, in their Japanese home market, are doing scrum services. And folks, Rico in Japan is a well-known name. Rico in Japan is doing tons of revenue in the Japanese marketplace around IT infrastructure, IT services, if you will. But at the end of the day, they can't be making any money. They can't be. Otherwise, they would have a lot more operating profit than 0.9%. And if they want to share the operating profit for just office services and then share the operating profit for the division with the MFPs separately, that'd be awesome. But they don't do it. They lump it all together. We'd have to believe that they know how to sell MFPs profitably, right? I mean, we'd have to believe that. So obviously they don't know how to sell IT services profitably, and it's dragging the company down. Bottom line, you can't do that much in revenue and not make any money. It's absurd. Why hasn't Rico learned from the apparent Mindshift disaster? We all remember what happened, right? They bought Mindshift in 2014, included them in a massive impairment in 2018. And you know, I've read this where they talk about this impairment before. But ladies and gentlemen, they're running around Europe. They're just gobbling up a bunch of IT services companies. It's crazy. And they say down here that they want to be this digital services company and that by 2025, they're going to have 60% or more of their revenue coming from digital services. Well, if you're including MFPs and IT services, that's pretty easy to do that. But at the end of the day, is it actually going to be profitable? Why become a digital services company? Why don't you just focus on being an MFP company, make as much profit as you can, milk the cow till there's no more milk? Because what you're doing right now is just disastrous. We saw all these acquisitions. I went over it many, many times. They're buying all this stuff up in Europe, and I believe it's killing them. I believe it's absolutely killing them. They're buying their revenues in Europe. If you look at the revenue number in the IT services space, in that digital service or office services space for Rico, it's big. It's bigger than the U.S. It's all bought growth. And unfortunately, they don't know how to deliver profitably, because if they knew how to deliver profitably, they'd have profit. And they don't. They barely get by above the line. Let's talk about some points for their forecasts. They made an adjustment to their operating profit by 9 billion yen, which is $59 million, because they got income recognition from an arbitration ruling on a claim filed by a Chinese subsidiary. At the end of the day, they're not growing their revenue. I guess if they win some kind of, settlement, they consider that a home run. Crazy. They talk about office printing, office services. And folks, at the end of the day, $9.2 billion in revenue for digital services with an $83.7 million operating profit at 0.9% is ridiculous. This company can't be taken serious as a digital services company. Anybody can go give stuff away in the marketplace. Hey, look at us. We're an IT services company. Here, we're going to give you all this for nothing. We're going to do these Scrum services. We don't care if we make any money. We want to do assessments. We'll do them for free. Here's all our human capital. It's going to waste hours and hours of time doing something for nothing. We don't care if we make any money, as long as we can call ourselves a digital services company. Because that's what's going on at Rico. I mean, it has to be. It's time to change the corporate vision. Or maybe it's time to change the corporate leaders. I wanted to look at their assets to equity ratio. Rico has a total of $15.7 billion in assets. 19% of those assets are goodwill and intangibles, too high. Expect a big impairment charge coming soon. I kept telling you Rico's going to have an impairment charge. It's coming, folks. But at the end of the day, they have a 45% asset to equity ratio, meaning 55% of their assets are encumbered in some way or another. But bigger story here is Rico just cannot perform profitably. That's just the reality. I want to end it with this. Why is there an inability to transition profitably? Simply put, how does Rico afford to become a digital services company? The more effort they put into it, it seems the more they lose. Do you need new leadership? Do you need a new strategy? It sounds to me like you sure do. Because delivering operating profit that's unacceptable in an ever-changing marketplace, ripe for disasters like big old impairment charges, more decline in print, and all these challenges are going to face Rico just like they face everyone else. And if Rico can't perform profitably in their transition in what they want to be and how they describe themselves in the future, we would all agree that in the future, Rico probably won't exist because they won't be profitable. Just some things to think about, because we all know this: status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck there, and I'll see you all tomorrow.